ex-husband backed out on his agreement. Ended up costing him so much more in the long run. My ex-husband and I had a great divorce. Even though he cheated on me after 12 years and 2 kids under 4, I really wanted to do things differently than my parents did during their divorce. I never said anything negative about him and tried very hard to defend him when the kids got upset with him. I extended invitations to the woman he left me for so she would not feel uncomfortable with me, and we became friends. She was basically their stepmom, so why not include her in everything? On holidays, we all had one big dinner. He and her and me and my boyfriend. This made everyone comfortable, and the kids never had to choose one side or the other, as we were all on the same page. It was such a great relationship that when I had back surgery, I recovered at his house and she cooked for me. He and I were coaches for the kids' basketball and baseball teams, and I helped at their wedding 13 years later. This was not easy for me, as he moved to another state to raise her children, leaving me to raise ours on my own. She quit her job when they got together, and I had to return to work to support my kids. But I needed to keep the resentment and bitterness away from my kids. All of this sets the tone for the divorce, but when he initially left, I spoke to a lawyer and got a separation agreement that was really great for me. He asked that I not take half of his retirement, but instead he would pay X in child support and additional Y in alimony, because he was making a lot of money and I was a stay-at-home mom with a country club membership. Yuck. I hated saying that, but it was only to set the scene. Normally, alimony ends after 5 years, but because I didn't get my half of the 401k, the only condition on ending it was it would end on my remarriage or my death. He agreed with all of it. The thing is, when he left me to move down to where she lived, he left his cushy job and took this promising, but not delivering, position that really screwed him financially. But he never went back to the lawyer to get the child support or alimony reduced. Instead, he borrowed from his mother. When I discovered he was mooching off of her, I suggested to her that she stop paying for him when he finally got back on his feet. She never would do that, and continued paying for his life and her to be a stay-at-home mom, even co-signing for a second home for him when he finally moved back to raise his kids. Hers had graduated and lived in his old house. Ours were in high school. He did come to me and ask if I would accept regular child support and half of the alimony. Then, later, when he was really earning money, he would pick back up on the past due amount. Not wanting to make waves in an otherwise great divorce, I said yes and kept track each month of what was owed in a shared spreadsheet with him, so he could see how far in debt he was getting each month. He ended up owing me $1,000 a month times 10 years. But he said when the kids aged out of child support, he would continue to pay the same amount to make up for the alimony, which totaled to $120,000. When my daughter aged out, he continued to pay the same amount, putting a small dent in what he owed for 3 years. Then, as soon as my son aged out, 2 weeks after he joined the Marines, he called me and told me there was no way he was going to continue paying me for the next X years, and I could take him to court if he wanted. But there is, in his words, no effing way he would pay me another cent. This completely blew my mind, as we had such a fantastic relationship, and it came out of nowhere. I was completely freaked out, but I took his advice. I contacted an attorney. I sent all his calls to voicemail, per my attorney's advice, and I took him to court. The best thing was, prior to the hearing, my attorney put a lien on both homes he had, so he could not change ownership to his mom or wife prior to the court hearing. I still have the phone call recording when he realized this, and the horrible names he called me for doing that. Since I had kept such immaculate records from that day he changed payments, and he was aware of his debt rising each month, it was a slam dunk for my attorney. Instead of making small payments for a few years, he had 30 days to pay me $120,000 in full. Unfortunately, the kids now have to choose which parent they visit on holidays, but that was not my fault. I was willing to continue as is and not put any strain on the family relationship. For those who are wondering, yes, he did cheat on her 2 times before they got married, but she had quit her job when they got together because she found a, quote, sugar daddy, and had nothing to fall back on, / nowhere to go, so she stayed with him. Since we were friends, she shared this info with me, as I would understand what she was going through. Edit: I got my money on day 29. No other payments will be made. Edit 2. I think the reason he went crazy on me was his mother refused to pay anymore when my son aged out, but I explained that he owed a crap ton in back pay. That's when he said, "If you think I'm making payments to you forever, you're effing nuts." She had been paying his child support for 10 years because he never went back to a great paying job, even though he could have. Yes, I went to work after separation and have a great career, but my income was still 1/4 of his when we were together because we moved every 3 years for his career. He wanted me to stay at home when the kids were born. Edit 3. It is obvious that people do not understand that as a stay-at-home mom, I could not contribute to my retirement fund because I didn't have earned income, meaning no Social Security, 401k, or IRA. So he maxed out his contributions so we could live comfortably in retirement. After 10 years of marriage, I was legally entitled to half of his retirement. Since he asked me not to take half of his retirement, he offered alimony instead. Then he decided not to pay what he offered and leave me with less retirement funds than I would have gotten in either case. Slim my or half of his retirement. This is why it was important for me to get what was due. Not to live a cushy life, but for my retirement. Something I've never really considered is what happens to a stay-at-home mom in a divorce. Like, getting divorced normally is already bad enough, but having pretty much no money, no job lined up, and no work history in the past decade is just brutal. Like, I honestly don't know how you come back from that. So I'm really glad OP got everything all figured out. You really think we're lying? Well, maybe we are. My mom's sister is very controlling of her daughter, who was 21 when this all happened. She won't let her go out anywhere without her, or stay at anyone's house, even family, apart from my place and our grandma's. It is also good to know that my aunt believes in every conspiracy theory imaginable, and will very easily think people are lying to her and conspiring against her. One day, my cousin was over to spend a few nights with me. Her mom just dropped her at the house without coming in. My mom happened to be spending the night at her friend's that night as well, which my aunt didn't know of. The next day, my aunt calls her daughter to ask about her. She also asks her about my mom and brother. This brother sometimes doesn't want to see people and avoids them when they come. Everyone in the family knows this, but aunt doesn't really believe it, apparently. My cousin lets her know that she hasn't seen them at all yet. My aunt, furious, "How can you not see them? I dropped you at your aunt's. I don't care about you being there for your cousin." My cousin lets her know my mom is coming back later that day. Fast forward to 7 p.m. It was wintertime, so it was night. My mom is not home yet, and my aunt calls again, saying if my mom doesn't come home right now, she'll come take her daughter back, which is really ridiculous. She also asks to speak to me on the phone, saying, "Is your mom okay? How can she go out for this long? Is your brother okay? Are you sure he's in his room? I feel something is wrong. You're all lying to me." I try my best to calm her, but nothing happens. A few minutes later, the doorbell rings. It was another relative. Barely a minute later, my mom shows up. We could have very easily told my mom the whole thing and made her call my aunt. But at that point, my cousin and I decided we'll do everything to make my aunt come for nothing, show up, find my mom, and leave. And since she already thinks everything we say is a lie, we just decided to tell her the full truth. Well, also making what we say sound hard to believe. We tell her my mom is home, but she doesn't believe us. Asks for us to pass the phone to her, but we tell her we can't. She calls her on her phone. My mom happens to be in the bathroom. She calls us back, and we tell her the truth. She calls again when my mom is out, but my mom proceeds to say, "Oh, it's my sister, I'll call her later. I'm busy with this relative now. Looks like things are happening by themselves." Aunt calls us back. We tell her the truth. She does not believe us at all. What are the odds we'd have an unannounced guest now and my mom decides not to answer? We falsely try to convince her while making the situation sound fake, and now she's on her way. The look on her face when my mom opened the door for her. She exploded at my mom. "Why don't you answer the phone? Blah, blah, blah." But trying to do it in a jokingly manner because she should feel embarrassment from making the situation this big. She stayed for a little bit, then left. Of course, my cousin stayed. Conspiracy theories can definitely be fun, but so many people dive so deep into that rabbit hole, it's like they turn into a completely different person. To be fair to the aunt though, I'd be a bit concerned with this whole situation too, not gonna lie. My first malicious compliance, the bathroom break bandit. I started my full-time job well home from school on summer break. I always loved reading the stories on this sub, and figured I might be in a similar situation at my job at some point. But I didn't realize it would happen so quickly. During my second week on the job, the guy training me came up to me and told me multiple coworkers had complained to him I was taking my breaks way longer than I was supposed to be. At first, I was confused by what he was talking about. I thought maybe people had gotten me confused with another new employee. But after a couple of minutes, I realized what was going on. So, for some context, the job was in a large warehouse, meaning it could take up to 5 minutes to walk to places like the break room or one of the bathrooms. Because of this, I would always try to use the bathroom right before my break, since there was a bathroom right there and I wasn't interrupting my work. I would speed run to the bathroom and start my break about 2 minutes late. Most workers also stayed a few minutes past the end of the break, myself included. These two things meant that even though I took the same length break as most of the other employees, it looked like I was staying about 5 minutes past my break. Don't like that? Okay. Well, around the same time, I learned they don't care when or how long you take your bathroom breaks. You can just go whenever. So, after I got the complaints, I stopped taking the quick 2-minute bathroom pit stops before my breaks. Instead, I stop in the middle of what I've been working on, walk 5 minutes to the bathroom, take a relaxing 10-minute bathroom break, and walk 5 minutes back. Repeat this 3 times per shift, and I've gone from stealing 6 minutes of company time per shift to up to 60 minutes, hence the bathroom break bandit. This took place last year. They later trained me on forklift, cutting down on how long it took to get to the bathroom. I have a new job now with higher pay, but I do slightly miss that job because it was pretty laid back, and besides this one incident, people were pretty friendly. What a perfect classic malicious compliance story to end on. Nice work, OP, and I'll see you all next time.